This is Experience Imagination, an award-winning themed entertainment podcast by FALCON'S Creative Group.
Story connects people to the experience.
Every aspect of creativity is brought together.
We wanted to do something different and fresh.
There are so many different disciplines that are involved in this industry.
Nothing will get you further than your passion.
This entire process is just making us better designers.
We're really pushing the envelope.
Hello everyone, Audrey DeLong here, welcoming you to our first episode of 2025. You know, this is no ordinary episode. Last November, I had a chance to speak with themed entertainment industry legend Bob Ward, who is one of the most accomplished, respected, and celebrated game changers of our time. Over his 50-year career, Bob has collaborated with large, multidisciplinary teams in the conceptualization, design, and production of mixed-use destinations, resorts, theme parks, and signature attractions. He spent 25 years with Universal Studios Parks and Resorts. You guys, he co-founded Universal Creative, and you're going to want to stick around to hear how that happened. In 2009, the International Themed Entertainment and Experience Design Industry awarded Bob the prestigious THEA Lifetime Achievement Award. Cecil Magpuri, our own trailblazer and experiential design expert, joined me for that conversation, and he's here with me right now to add more context. Hey, Cecil.
Hey, Audrey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Happy New Year. Is it too late to say that?
Happy New Year. Yeah, no, it's very good.
All right, so I remember when Bob was here for the recording, I walked him around our office, and he said hello to a bunch of the people he knows. And the admiration that people felt for Bob, I mean, you could just see it. It was palpable, right? Mm-hmm. He's such an interesting guy, and he's so likable. Tell us about his personality.
Yeah, you just want to hug him.
Yeah,
right?
I do.
Uncle Bob. No, he's amazing. But, you know, what comes with it is the respect with all the knowledge he has about our industry, the industry we love. To have a beacon like him be so approachable and eager to teach, eager to share, you know, it's that additional layer of not only is he respected, but the approachability and accessibility, it shows with his smile.
Yeah.
So, very special person.
You have called Bob your mentor. So I'm wondering, what has he meant for your career?
Oh, significant. You know, when you're early in your career, you know, you have some apprehension about kind of flexing and showing your capabilities. So you look to those who are the leaders in the industry. And oftentimes you put on a filter of caution. Be careful to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
When I joined Universal Studios, the onboarding process was, you know, you sat in a room, you got to see a video about the leadership. And it had a nice big picture of Bob Ward, and he had one of those sweaters that you fold the arms, and it's, you know, that kind of preppy look. And and I'm like, wow, he seems so kind and approachable. He's not in this three-piece suit, you know, and you would hope that the creative people in these industries are actually creative. And so when I got to actually meet him and see him at work doing his thing, it was perfect to what you would hope someone of his caliber would be doing.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it was very special. And then as you get to know him even more, it's like the way he listens. It's not just the aura of communicating and being a mentor. He's actually eager to understand your position, and it's like he's a student as well. Like he's eager to learn, you know. And so when you have a leader at that caliber, that also shows that he's constantly learning from his colleagues. That's special.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it.
Awesome. I'm excited for the listeners.
Yeah, me too. Welcome, Bob Ward. Hello.
Thank you, Audrey.
And then hello, Cecil.
Hey, Audrey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. I'm hanging in there.
I'm great. It's a great opportunity to come hang out with my pal.
I know, right? You two go way back.
Oh, yeah.
Which we're going to get into.
Yeah, Bob was a mentor of mine, you know, so
yeah, in
that early stages of Universal days. So it was just seeing your face and just all of a sudden memories go flooding back.
Yeah. All right, Cecil, let me get your take on this. Bob is such an inspirational figure. He's a magical storyteller. Do you remember the first time you experienced this for yourself?
I was solicited by Universal to work on an amazing project called Apollo 13. And when I was invited to come, I was fortunate to be on the purple carpet. And so this is an inside thing. The 488 building at Universal was infamous for all the very famous brain trust of Universal Creative was on the purple carpet on property at Universal Studios Hollywood. And then immediately there was a birthday celebration for Norm Newberry, another legend, and you did a little speech and you invited us in the purple carpet to come and just hear your little dialogue about how important Norm has been in the life of Universal. And that was my first engagement of seeing you speak eloquently about how important Norm was.
And it was very heartfelt.
It was so heartfelt. It was such a special moment. And the humbleness and approachability was something that I didn't expect, but that was something that was immediately the case.
It was family style.
It was very family. Very family.
So Norm Newberry was my executive art director. He did film and television, and he is who helped bring in all the other real art directors because that's what we wanted at the time. And so much of what I've accomplished, I mean, it wouldn't have happened without him.
Yeah. You guys were the beacon of what I thought was the heart of the culture of Universal Creative. You know, having the leadership and how you guys, I mean, you were a founder of Universal Creative.
Which came farther down the road.
But what you guys were creating, and you got to tell the story about how it even started. I mean, there was no theme park division at Universal.
No. They were in the studio tour business.
Yes.
Right.
How my Universal adventure started, right out of school, I started at Disney in Orlando in a group called PICO, Project Installation Coordinating Office. It wasn't Imagineering yet. It was still just WED, Walter Elias Disney.
Yes.
And WED probably didn't even have 500 people in it total. And this was a specialty group that handled all the detailed installations of rides and shows and that kind of thing. And I have a BFA background. I mean, I never had been on a construction site or anything, even though I watched Walt every Sunday night talking about it.
Like all of us, right?
And Frank Stanek told me, you know, those images of him with the pointer at the wall, that was Frank's office.
No way.
Yeah, he was head of strategic planning for Disney.
Behind the scenes.
That was actually Frank's office. And he led them coming to Orlando, to Japan, and to Europe. And so we're in trailers out on the lot, and
that's here on the East Coast.
Yeah, that was Walt Disney World.
Walt Disney World.
And so they go, well, you have an art background, so we're going to assign you to Liberty Square, and you're going to be in charge of all the FF&E installation. And I'm trying not to be totally obvious that I have no idea what they're talking about.
What's that acronym?
Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, of course. And
I knew that.
and so then they give me a walkie-talkie and a hard hat, and they literally go, you're going to Liberty Square, you know, manage the installation. And if you need help or a question, that's why you have this radio. And what was really cool was
about being thrown in.
Because all the, you know, and I'm still basically a kid. I mean, what am I, 18, 19?
Early 20s, let's say.
Early 20s, yeah. What was really cool was the original Disney art directors on Disneyland were all there.
Wow.
And
Legends,
that's
right?
where it starts.
Yeah.
And if you had any interest or you showed interest and asked questions, they were just like a hose feeding you everything about it. And so I got this whole backstory from them about how it all evolved. Many of them were architects originally, and then they moved into films and set design, and then they created a theme park. And so the park opened. I had made friends with Schollard Moss from Welton Beckett, who was the interior designer of the Contemporary, and he invited me to be his guest on the big opening day celebration. So we rode over on the monorail, and we stood on this monorail station in front of the park, and people were getting off the monorail, they were getting out of the boats, they were all filing, families, friends, they were all filing through the train station tunnels like it was the proscenium of a stage. And they came out the other side, and they were in this other world that was so magical and special. And they were there with their families and friends. All the cares are left behind, and this is going to be the most wonderful moment of their lives.
And you were there to witness it.
And that's what hooked me on wanting to be part of creating those opportunities, and that led me to pursue the career.
So you were there at the beginning of Magic Kingdom opening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome beginning. And so that was your introduction to it.
Yes.
And you fell in love. And you said, one day I'm just going to be the guy in charge. I'm sure there's a lot that happened in between. But you were hooked, like a lot of people do. They get hooked.
Well, there's opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see them and we are able to do something with them. Other times we're distracted and they come and they go and we miss them altogether. And so once the park opened, I was still at WED, and a dear friend of mine now, John Drury, was the head of graphics and signage. And 45 years at Disney as an art director, but every 10 years or so he'd quit and then come back. and so he had got upset again and he left. And so all of a sudden I learned from Chuck Mile, who is the head of Florida WED, that you're now in charge of graphics and signage site-wide, roadsides, in the park, hotels. Even though that wasn't my expertise, I certainly had graphics background and had visual background and all of that. And that was very instrumental in me auditing classes and learning about the art of management in the development of a project at Universal. Because as the graphics guy, it's so important to Disney. I was in all these meetings with the retail guys, the operating guys, food and beverage, all the stakeholders. And so I was there for signage and stuff, but I would just stay and audit the conversation. And so I started to pick up the dynamics of how, what was important to them and how they thought about it. And so I was trying to absorb all of that. And that also gave me a chance to go out to Glendale and go to WED several times. Ernie Prinzhorn was the head of graphics signage for all their projects. And so that's when I got to meet the famous art directors on Art Director Row, when you walk in from the lobby and they're all lined up there, Al Bartino and all those guys. And, that immediately caused me to go, I want to be one of those guys. So one of my first impactful mentors was Chuck Mile. He was an architect, but been at WED for quite some time, and he led the Florida office. And, it was a small team back then. So one day, Chuck says, let's go to lunch. And he said, so, I can see where you are much more than the graphics and signage guy, because of all these things you're now doing that you weren't asked to do, but you did. And so consequently said, those guys on Art Director Row, they come up with these great ideas and illustrate them. And then they move on to somewhere else. And the team takes over, and hopefully they're going to capture that inspiration and still deliver what it was originally meant to be. But the art directors on Art Director Row have nothing to do about that journey. And he said, the way that you've gone out and kind of gotten a more comprehensive view of things, I think you could do so much more than that. And so you should think about that. What
a great mentor.
Yeah, it was really awesome.
But he was losing the head of the graphics by promoting you to take on a different role.
Well,
right?
I did. I was still
signage
signage and graphics. That never. While I was there, what caused me to leave, because when I went to Glendale, I got to meet a lot of the art directors, including Rolly Crump.
Wow.
And Rolly Crump and
it's
I kind of hit it off. And he calls me up one day and says, Bob, I'm leaving Disney to go to Irving and Kenneth Feld to help create a Circus World theme park in Florida, in Orlando. Mattel backed them. And so this is getting toward the mid-'70s. And he said, would you like to come along as my assistant art director? And I'm thinking to myself, no. Sherlock.
Think about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so that's what caused me to leave Disney. And so, we built the big tent with the IMAX theater and all the other stuff and things going on then. And then we had an economic dive. So everything shut down. Mattel pulled the plug.
Wow,
It
interesting.
never happened after that. That's when I went out on my own. And during that time, I started thinking, there's an opportunity to create Disney quality entertainment on a smaller scale in more regional markets. And you don't always have to be the big guy. And I'm really proud to say, and I still have Huckleberry Junction rolled up in my studio, I created this idea I called Huckleberry Junction that would fit in a department store. And it would be around Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn and have rides and games and all this kind of stuff in a mall. And so that was really the very location-based entertainment.
Yeah, that's the
wasn't-
beginning of
it was-
LBE.
it was-
That's what I was just going to
It
say.
was not thought
Before
of
it was
then.
coined
Nobody,
LBE.
Nobody
Right.
knew what that was.
Yeah.
It was just me going, this quality of family entertainment shouldn't be just in Disney theme parks. There are a lot of places who would appreciate it too.
Yeah, the consumers
And so
can
I was
benefit
starting
if
to
it's
do
around
that.
the corner, right?
But of course, none of that went anywhere. And so it became clear if I wanted to follow my dreams, I needed to get a real job again. And so I literally took a portfolio to LA and got an interview at Warner Brothers. They had nothing there. And a good friend's dad was the head of publicity at Paramount, and he got me an interview with Herb Steinberg, who is the publicist for Lou Wasserman at Universal.
Wow.
Really?
And,
Big names
and
there.
so go all
yeah.
the way up. Well, that's a whole nother story.
whole nother
my
story.
10 years with Lou Wasserman. So I'm in his office, up in the Black Tower, like the floor right
yeah.
below Lou. And he goes, you need to see Barry Upson. And I said, okay. He said, we just hired him back. He was the first general manager of the studio tour when we opened it in '64. He then left and started his own company, and we've just now brought him back. But that's who you need to talk to because he's the head of planning and development now. So he sent me down there. I met Barry, told him, went through all my stuff like Huckleberry Junction and all the other things. And he's going, this is great stuff, Bob, but we just have the studio tour. We're not a theme park. And I doubt that we'll ever be a theme park because our management doesn't think that way. But, let's keep in touch just in case. So he was really there to start looking for property in Florida, but he wasn't saying anything.
Wow.
I had no idea.
What a great poker face,
no,
Barry.
I know, right.
No idea. And so he said, let's keep in touch. So I would call occasionally and speak to Darcy as assistant, and most of the time he was not available. So I developed a relationship with Darcy, who then would tell me when he had an opening on his calendar and when to call.
Who's the real boss, right?
And
Darcy.
So that would allow us to have conversations. And then I came to California on a project for Knott's Berry Farm, and so I came up to see Barry, and we had lunch in Toluca Lake. And Barry the bear, he was
Yeah.
big.
Big.
Yeah.
Big.
Big
And I go back home, and I could swear a month or two later, I see this big guy towering over everybody on Park Avenue that has a Dodger, in Winter Park that has a Dodgers satin jacket on. And I'm going,
There's no other person
Right.
Barry Upson.
but he's like a block and a half ahead of me. And it was a weekend, it was busy and crowded. And by the time I got up there, he'd pulled in somewhere and I didn't see him. And so I speak to Darcy, Barry's in town. She said, yeah, I know. We just opened a little office in Winter Park. I said, oh, really? She said, yeah. We only have one employee, but that's where Barry camps out when he comes. And she gave me the name of the receptionist they had. So she called her and said I'd come down, and I met her. And so I developed a relationship with her over the next
There you go.
couple of months. And one morning on the news, here's Lou, Sid, Jay, Barry, the whole gang in a downtown hotel announcing that Universal Studios is coming to Orlando.
And what year was this?
This was 1979.
79. It was that early.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So I go down and sit in the lobby right beside the door where they had to come in and out. And in comes Lou.
You camped out.
Right across from Park Plaza Gardens. And I'm going, they're all filing in. And
I mean, all of them? I'm Lou and Jay?
yeah, because they were coming.
So Lou Wasserman, Jay Stein,
Right.
they were physically
here.
With Barry.
And Barry comes walking in, and he looks down and goes, "Bob, what are you doing here?" I go, "Well, Barry, this is pretty exciting news that you guys have been talking about for a while, and I'd sure love to talk to you about it." And he goes, "We need a lot of help, so why don't you meet me for a beverage across the street around 6 o'clock?" And so I did that, and he goes, "We don't have a big staff. We don't have lots of experience, and we need a lot of help, and I'd like to get you involved. But you need to know that we have a leader, our president, who thinks he's the chief creative officer, named Jay Stein. And he's notorious in the business for chewing up creative people and spitting them out, or make them whine. And
Oh, yeah.
And
I got a little taste of that.
We got to see if the mojo is going to work with you too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should try you out on an attraction. Jay has this idea to do an attraction based on sound effects. And so why don't you come out? We'll set you up with that. So I did. So I meet Jay, Terry Winnick, Barry, and Jay's saying, okay, I have this great idea about sound effects. People don't know it's all on the Foley stage. It's totally recorded differently. And it's amazing how they do all of that.
Oh, it's movie magic.
And, based on our success with the screen test theater, of teaching people how this is done and putting them in it and then selling them a tape, I think we could do the same thing with sound effects theater, but would be even more fun. He talks more and more about it, and it needs to be something that really employs all the sound effects and creates a hysterical moment. And Susan and I are going to Positano for 2 weeks on vacation, and when I get back, let me see what you got, kid.
Oh, wow.
that was it.
That's
It was
epic.
like the gauntlet was laid down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
You either deliver or you don't, right?
They hooked me up with a writer. Terry introduced me to all the sound Foley guys. And so I got immersed in it. It was right beside the Hitchcock Theater.
Okay, yeah.
And Tom Kelsey was the writer. And so we dreamed up this high-class dinner party that turns into a food fight. And, so there's all kinds of sounds and everything else, and plates and everything. So Tom's writing a script. Meanwhile, I'm doing storyboards, and we're making it up. How all that's happening. And just because of the background I had till then, I just thought it was normal to lay out the theater. So I got all these theater books and studied up on theater and everything else. So I kind of did a plan and an elevation and section of the theater. And so now we're armed with the script, the storyboards, and a facility. And so we're nervous as heck. And we're going up the elevator. Barry says, look, expect to be interrupted within the first 2 minutes, because that's what he does. Sometimes it's just to throw you off balance. Other times it's because he's going to yell and scream at you, what are you talking about? So try to be prepared. So we're up there, and Tom's going through the script, and I've got storyboards push pinned on a piece of foam board, so while he's going through the script, I'm kind of acting stuff out and going through the storyboards over here. And minutes go by, and he said nothing. And Tom and I are looking at each other, and I look at Barry, and we're all looking. I'm going,
keep
Someone check his pulse, right?
Keep on going.
So we kept
his pulse.
We kept rolling.
Put a mirror against his face.
So we just kept rolling, and we got all the way to the end, and he never said a single word. And I was like, Tom and I are both thinking, this will be really, really bad, or it could be really, really good.
Yeah, it's one or the other.
No idea.
Yeah,
and
it's only one or the other. There's no middle ground.
There's this pause at the end of all that, and Jay goes, well, I typically have a lot to say during presentations. But I was so captivated by what you guys have put together here. And I do have a lot of comments and ideas, but you were on a roll and I didn't want to interrupt you.
Wow.
And then
He respected
And then
it,
he
huh?
said, I usually don't get as many storyboards that, usually it's about a script narrative and that's it.
Yeah.
Imagine
it yourself in your head.
Right.
from
And
the
so,
words.
but you brought storyboards, but I never imagined someone showing me what the theater would look like.
Oh, wow.
He said
He's not
that's
used to
the
it.
most comprehensive concept I've ever had presented to me.
That's crazy.
That's why I wasn't interrupting you, because I wanted to, read the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I that was successful. I come back to Orlando, and like 2 weeks later, Barry calls me and says, Bob, Jay was impressed enough that he wants me to ask you if you would be the director of design for the entire park.
It's insane.
I have never done that before either.
Yeah. Talk about on-the-job training.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's
I started
incredible.
in 1980, and I was the fourth person, Barry, Richard, Terry, and myself, and Darcy and Cindy. And that's where it all started.
That's where Universal Creative
And we had a
started.
meeting with Lou, Sid, Jay, and everybody else where we showed them our inch model of an earthquake attraction that I had designed also.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in this presentation, and I could tell, because I learned quickly, when Lou starts fidgeting, there's a problem. And we got into it about 15 minutes, and he said, Jay, I can't believe what the hell you've done here. Because Jay didn't want him meddling in his idea. But it was a bad idea not to update him occasionally. So he hadn't yet seen anything. And he goes, I'm putting a hold on this whole project. Whether we pick it up again or not, I don't know.
Wow.
And during that time, Lou decided, well, we'll only do it if we can get a joint venture partner. So then Barry and I spent a lot of time traveling around the country pitching the idea, looking to get partners. So we had all the Marvel characters, we had all those characters, and we're conceptually designing a park based on that, working title Cartoon World. So that didn't go through. That's when we created the Islands of Adventure idea by using intellectual. We didn't have intellectual properties, so that's when we went out to the Chicago Tribune to get the stuff for Toon Lagoon. That's when we started chasing Dr. Seuss, and we did have Jurassic. That
You
was
did
our
have
one
Jurassic,
thing,
that was one idea.
and we had King Kong. And Peter Alexander had joined us a couple of years prior to that, so he was really the attractions guy, but at that time, we were still just a small group, and so we collaborated a lot on the first attractions.
Right.
So he ultimately took over the script
Production
and the production and everything else. But also during the construction is when Steve Spielberg wandered in because he's on the back
on the
lot,
lot,
and he sees all this going on, and he runs into Peter Alexander. I wasn't there at the time, and he goes, I didn't know you guys could do something like this. And that started the conversation about becoming our
Creative
partner.
Guardian, yeah.
Because his buddy George Lucas had the
E.T.
Star Wars,
Oh, the Star Wars,
thing at Disney.
Yeah.
And he was always bugging Stephen about, come see my attraction and everything else. And Stephen never had one and didn't think he ever would. But now,
Now
I want one of
there-
those,
now's an
too.
opportunity. So the first ET will always be here because that is our small world. That is Stephen's.
that's right.
That is the one.
I don't think
That's good to hear.
consumers
It's
will
not
ever
going
let
anywhere. Yeah.
Universal let that one go.
And so that led to the relationship with Stephen. So we had E.T., Back to the Future from Stephen, and then we had Jaws. So those were the three anchors.
Yeah.
That was the ignition for us to have
yeah.
properties that were big at the time. And so I conceptualized Jaws and began with E.T. and then worked with others at Favo on the wall right now. I have one of a few of the E.T. sketches I have discovered in a storage unit.
Oh, man.
That is one of my first sketches of the moment when the bike goes over the police car and the cops are waving, stop, and you take off and you soar over the valley. And so I was imagining it just like the movie, a couple of bikes and
those cut
all that
scenes
kind of stuff. That was my naivete about a thing I learned a lot about later called ride capacity.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I learned about ride capacity.
THRC. Oh,
There
my
you
God.
go. Yeah.
Theoretical hourly ride capacity.
And so all of a sudden, my cool idea of palling around with your pal and ET and everything else became, I forget what it is, the 12 bike bus or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, people still go for it because it's such an amazing place.
Yeah.
It's such an iconic moment in the movie, too.
Disbelief.
Very. And so I also worked with Peter conceptualizing Jaws. And so one of the things I was promoting is the sharks got to bite the boat. and of course, nobody had ever done that really before by going, he's not going to really bite the boat, but we've got to make this look like
the illusion
he's coming at you and he's going to bite the boat and it's terrible and all this stuff. Yeah. And so
Keep your arms and legs within the boat.
That led to us finding oceaneering because we had pushed the envelope, didn't fully understand the stresses under the water and all these other kinds of things. We ultimately got it fixed, but on opening day, it was one of the attractions that broke down a lot. Yeah. And I was on a boat with Sid Sheinberg, his wife, I forget other Disney executives and guests, and our boat got stuck.
Of course.
And here we are, we got guests all around. One of the things about the early days at Universal, intimidation was used a lot.
As a form of management, you're saying?
Yeah. Challenge. I saw people wilt in front of these guys when you're in a meeting, but it also seemed to me they were like the little spring dog in the back window. They were like trying to read Lou and Sid, and they weren't being passionate about what they were presenting. And so I learned a big thing there also.
Knowing your audience.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Knowing your audience, right.
So before we go, Bob, I do want to ask, what are you up to these days?
Well, that's a great question. A couple of amazing things. I met Philippe Cousteau Jr. on a project in Singapore, Eighth Wonder of the World, which was part of a bid for a $5.5 billion gaming license. And he was there as the environmentalist. And he was still in his 20s. And we became close friends. And so we've continued to collaborate. I just finished a project with him for the Red Sea Global Group, all based on coral restoration and reproduction, which was simply amazing. And I'm also on the advisory board to the Holocaust Museum of Hope and Humanity that's going to be built in downtown Orlando. But more importantly, I'm really deep dived into a project with the Space Force. People don't know what it is, what they do, or anything else.
Right.
And I met the chairman of Space Force Historical Foundation, Ray Sands, and I'm going, Ray, you guys need a brand experience. People don't understand what the Space Force is. They relate to brands. You are the real Star Trek. In fact, Gene Roddenberry's graphic designer that designed the Star Trek Delta actually designed the Space Force Delta. So there's a whole lineage there. And Space Force has two primary objectives. Obviously, defense of America and its interests at home and in space, but also what's called assured access to space. And that's big business, commercial business. That's SpaceX launching, and that's all the everybody else launching, and more barges. And we're already building a spaceport to be erected, hopefully by the end of this decade, and not just a space station, a spaceport. And so it's moving fast.
In outer space.
In outer space, but in orbit around Earth. So one of my goals is to create a place where a 10 to 13-year-old can walk in with this iPhone and knows everything about every technology that exists, and he can't figure out some of the things we have.
So it's a learning engagement opportunity.
Exactly. I'm as excited about this opportunity as I was when we first created Universal's first theme park.
No way.
And in many ways, it's the same way. It would be a pretty cool bookend to my career to be able to help facilitate a destination that is equivalent to Kennedy Visitor Center.
Exactly.
And that's what we're chasing now.
Well, I'll be there. I'll be in line for that. Let us know when that starts getting off the ground.
Will do.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Bob, for coming and sharing all your stories. And you have to come back because we just kind of skimmed the surface.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Cecil, thanks for joining us.
You bet. It's always nice to be here with my mentor, So
Well, you're very overly generous. I helped hire you, but you had the mojo.
Thank you, Bob, for that. I really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you.
Well, that was an amazing conversation and a huge honor for me personally. I really hope you got something out of it that elevates your work or even affects how you go about your day-to-day life. So thanks again to Bob Ward for joining me and Cecil today and sharing some of your stories with us. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back soon with an all-new episode. Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to check out falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you have ideas for future episodes or just want to drop us a message, send an email to podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.